Hi everyone, I'm Tuğçe Koçoğlu-Hobden, founder of Coaching with Heart and Purpose and host of Light Conversations. Welcome to today's show. My beautiful guest today, Louisa Munson, astrologer, coach, channeler, business owner and founder of Feel Good Astrology, podcaster, presenter, healer, wife and mother. Louisa bridges the magic and the everyday with a practical blend of astrology, channeling and subliminal coaching. She'll focus you around self-healing, the right mindset and futuring. She'll tell you what you don't know yet, but need to know to save you time, effort, heartache, and money. Louisa has featured as a guest on many podcasts and runs her own show, Feel Good Astrology, which is brilliant. So please check her out for yourself. Louisa is also a guest speaker at this year's Higher Self Expo, founded by Zane Daniel. This year's theme is Where Science Meets Spirituality. It's a 24-hour broadcast event featuring 6 hosts and 33 speakers in 6 different continents on the 17th and 18th of July. This 24-hour broadcast will feature researchers, light workers, world changers in all countries around the world. And please stay tuned until the end, where Louisa will lead us into a channeled meditation. You won't want to miss it. Louisa, welcome to Light Conversations. So excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tuğçe. What a lovely welcome I got there. It's always funny, isn't it, when you hear people talk about you and I think, wow, I've done that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you do all this and you're a mother.
But like when I actually think about my reality on a day-to-day basis, it's like 3 hours of intense work. And then the rest of it is like running around with a washing basket and pegging things out, wiping bottoms and things like that, and having someone go, Mom, at me all day. So I forget, what I do.
Brilliant. I mean, we'll get on. I'm definitely going to be asking you how you balance all of it, because, you do have 3 children and one quite really young, only 2. So
it's incredible. Bless him. He's doing very well. No, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Really, really happy. And yeah,
brilliant.
I'm glad to, be a.
Well, before we dive into the interview, I thought it's been quite an energetically intense time, planetary and energetically, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think a few weeks ago I had a gentleman affectionately known as the Red Robe Astrologer, Dr. Michael Lennox, on the show. We were talking about whereas Mercury retrograde was approaching, and he was talking about, I think we're on it now actually, where the square between Saturn and Uranus. Or Saturn Neptune? Oh my God, yes. I'm not sorry.
Saturn and Uranus are in an exact square today. It's the second of 3 squares.
Right.
Yeah. And I will happily talk about that.
Yeah. And we've also just had a new moon in Gemini. We had the solar eclipse and we've got the summer solstice coming on. So it's energetically quite intense. What else is going on and what can you share with us?
Well, I think the focus is the ongoing Saturn-Uranus square. Pretty much since the start of this year, and right until the end of the year, we've got Saturn and Uranus in a square. And so what happens is the planets kind of move and they form these patterns, and then one moves slightly faster or one goes retrograde, and they're kind of like doing this little dance where they kind of fall into synchronicity and then fall out of it. But they don't fall out of this square pattern that often, like they're falling out of it. It's almost like when you're doing a jigsaw, you can put the piece right in, or it can just kind of be balanced on top. So we've got this continuous theme, and Saturn is about rules, regulations, the patriarchy, legal stuff, banking stuff, and the structures underpinning Western society. And I think it's fair to say that Saturn really represents that. Saturn's recently gone into the sign of Aquarius as well. So we've got the new themes for Saturn. So like Saturn has been came out of Capricorn on the 17th of December last year. And so when he was in the sign of Capricorn, he was trying to bring and enforce regulations. That was the energy that was going down. This has to be done. And he had this power play going on with Jupiter and Pluto. Like last year was a huge thing. And the lineup of that hadn't happened for hundreds, thousands of years, in fact, for the exact position. In fact, the last time those three planets were together in the sign of Capricorn, where they were, was at the start of Babylonia. Of a civilization like reboot, the start of a civilization coming together. And it's really interesting because they've come together again in the same place so many thousands of years later, and it almost looks like the civilization that was created is coming to an end. Or is it? Is a new are we going through a new kind of reset point? So it's kind of, it's big stuff that we're going through. It's no surprise that the pandemic, I'm going to call it a phenomenon, because I'm not entirely sold that we're, the way we actually physically experience it is the way that it's being told on the media. So from my perspective and from my own actual experience, I'm going to call it a phenomenon. So I hope I don't offend anyone that's listening in, but the phenomenon of it really matches the astrology. Pluto is about death and dying, and Jupiter is about expansion. So if you think the expansion idea of dying, and then the rules represented by Saturn coming down to enforce things because of it. So that's the sort of underpinning. And then we've come into this with Saturn and Uranus in a square. Saturn is the rules, wanting to be like, everything has to be regulated, but Uranus is our freedom planet. It's our planet that's awakening. It's our freedom planet that wants us to be independent, that wants us to channel from our own independent spirit. It's that part of us that wants a flat, kind of equal level pegging for everyone. Saturn is hierarchical, and Uranus is like pulling the rug out from underneath Saturn's standing. So we've got two very different planets, and they're square to each other, so they're irritating each other. They're not, every move that Saturn makes, Uranus is kind of pulling at the structure, like pulling at it and kind of knocking it down. And then Saturn's trying to throw things at Uranus and saying, stop it, you little child. It's like Uranus, it could represent right now the youngsters. And Saturn is also known as an old man, is also known as Kronos in mythology. So you've got the old father time against Uranus, who is like, I think of it a bit like Luke Skywalker. And I want to call Saturn Darth Vader, but in actual fact, Darth Vader is Pluto. Saturn is kind of like the stormtroopers.
Right.
So we've got the stormtroopers versus Han Solo and his crew. Of renegades, social renegades. Social stuff is really coming up. Like Uranus went into Taurus, I think in 2017, 2018. And in the sign of Taurus, it's about rebelling against economy and resources, because the sign of Taurus is very much about the resources we have to hand, the ability for us to be stable and for us to be able to meet our physical needs. So food, houses, energy. And so it's no surprise that like money, the way food gets delivered and shared, how our banking is changing quite rapidly and going online. Like Uranus is futuristic. It's social. It wants to reach more people, but technology is really highlighted. So, it feels like we're going through a social technological upgrade. And we've also got the old pale, I don't want to call it pale, male and stale, but, the philosophy of, the people in power. I mean, they might be female, they might not be pale, and they might be very fresh, but the idea of the sort of patriarchy, or big brother, is very staid, doesn't tend to like to move for this. And my only concern is what happens if the two of them get together and then all of a sudden we have this new world thrust upon us that looks all fun and groovy, and it looks very social. It looks like there's a real kind of beauty for everybody, but it's an organized thing that we all have to participate in. So these are really epic things. And today it's really tight.
Wow. And I love the way, you described that kind of that reboot. I think when I would talk about it the other week, was like, a rebirth of, this is going through that. Last year was that reckoning, year of reckoning, and this year's that rebirth and the reboot. And I love, and how you describe, Saturn and the patriarchy, right? We're going the age of Pisces, kind of as age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. We're in that thick of it. And you talked about the structures, and I'm seeing around us, the kind of the structures that we thought were kind of we kind of knew and understood, the mainstream media and the censorship that's going on around us, and the technologies, and and communication. So I think it's interesting that Mercury is in here as well, right? Because that's all about communication.
Yeah, see, like Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year. And so I don't tend to sweat the small stuff, like, you know, like Mercury, yeah, it can be a kind of like flea in your ear or something, and you do need to watch out. But I also see Mercury retrograde as being an opportunity for us to rethink and re-envisage and reimagine. However, I've kind of been eating my words this time, because Mercury is going retrograde in his own sign, in the sign of Gemini. And boy, is it hit home, because it's right in the middle of the eclipse season. So the eclipse season tends to take place around June and then around November, December. But that does vary year on year. It's calculated with the observance and understanding of the North Node and the South Node. And it's all astronomically calculated. And it just so happens this Mercury retrograde is in between this eclipse season. And the eclipse season in itself is like a karmic signpost as to what's coming up for people. And it's straddling the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius right now, which is where the North Node and South Node are. And so Gemini is about facts, short facts. It's like a basic education. It's like, what do we know about our actual environment, our immediate environment, and the community around us? It's very factual. It doesn't necessarily go into any depth, whereas Sagittarius is looking for philosophical truth, the beliefs, the this, that, and the other, and the context around it. And we're seeing these patterns play out. You know, there are some people that are saying, well, this is what I've been told. This is what's in my community. This is where I go to for answers. And there's no questioning about it. And that's kind of like a Gemini approach. And then there's a Sagittarian approach over there, who are like, okay, I'm going to check this out and I'm going to read this because this has been censored. And I think, there's a red flag in itself. Right. And they're gathering information. But they're not able to sell it back to the Gemini people, and the Gemini people aren't able to sell it back to the Sagittarian. And obviously we're not actually talking about Geminis and Sagittarius, but everybody right now have this, you know, I think most people on the planet actually will, you know, want to live peacefully. And I truly believe we're all doing our best. And I think actually with the Gemini and Sagittarius theme, and then the kind of fight between the stormtroopers versus the Han Solo kind of thing, the verses of darkness and light. And, you know, I don't mean to call anyone that's in law enforcement or any kind of enforcement, you know, a bad person necessarily, because that's not true. Everyone has their role to play at the moment. But I actually think we are pretty much in a movie. It's almost like we are in the Truman Show, only we are all Truman. And right now, you know, anyone that's seen the Truman Show and who has come to the end of it, and, you know, Truman has realized that everything around him is fake or has been fake. Like you said only moments ago, Tuğçe, it's like all the things that we've trusted, we're starting to say, hang on a second, how does that actually work? How does that work? Really, that doesn't fit in. And you're right, we are coming up to the time of Pisces. You know, we're going through an Aquarian thing at the moment, but Jupiter went into Pisces very recently, a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to be dancing in between Pisces and Aquarius over the next 9 months. But when Jupiter goes into Pisces, it always marks a time of renewed faith and spirituality and a knowing. It's a rise of intuition. And so I think the situation that people are forced in, it's almost like overload, and there's not going to be anything people can do. They won't be able to think their way out of this situation. Their minds are kind of going to explode, and actually what they're going to be left with is, actually, who am I? What do I believe in my heart? And then we'll realize, actually, whoa, that voice inside me is actually much better than the voice on the television. Oh my goodness, I can find my answers from inside. I don't need to look outside. I just need to look inside myself. So we are coming up to that time. And I think for people that can embrace it, they'll find it easy. And for people that struggle with it, it could be a bit difficult. So that's my synopsis anyway. And if you want to go like even bigger, I think it has a happy ending. But I also think we're going into a time of bifurcation. So like the idea that the people who want the world to be very regulated, they're going to find that. And the people who don't want their life regulated, who believe that they can regulate their own lives and be socially great people, be great neighbors, I think they're going to get the chance to do that too.
Yes, I love that.
Like vibrationally, we're just going to part.
Yeah. Exactly. We'll part our ways, and we will find our way. We'll find our way through it.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's possible. Like if you watch the news or listen to the news, you won't believe it's possible to do that. However, during the World War, like 1 and 2, we were told it was a world war and everyone was affected pretty much. But I'm living in rural Portugal, and there would have been vast swathes of communities that didn't even know there was a war on. Yeah. So the idea that this is what's happening because we're telling you, that's not necessarily true. There will be lots of people that haven't even taken part in what's been going on in this last year. We just don't hear about them.
Yes, that's very true. Yes. So I think going back to what you were saying as well about being that curious, just remaining a bit curious and, just going a little bit, digging a bit deeper, right? I think it's Sagittarius known for curiosity and freedom, right? I feel like Sagittarius is that sign of freedom, right?
Which sign I am?
Brilliant. I need to work out. I wonder if I've got any Sagittarius in my chart. I have to look at that. We'll go back afterwards and look at that.
Well, you do. You have every sign in your chart, but we'll have a look at what it means.
Have a look at that. Yeah, we'll see whereabouts in my chart exactly. So your interest in astrology, and thank you so much for that brilliant synopsis. I think it's really powerful, and I love your Star Wars analogy. I think a lot of people, my children, love that. Actually, I'm going to start explaining it to them in terms of Star Wars. So your interest in astrology started at a really young age. I think you were 6. Is that right? Gosh, how did that come about? And
it was a really ordinary day. We were just walking to the shop, my mum, my sister and I, just to get the newspapers, probably the radio and TV Times. I'm going back in time. And my mum, we got the radio TV Times, and my mum was looking at the horoscopes, and she said, "Oh, you've got 2 signs." And I was just fascinated, like, what do you mean? And so she said, well, you're on the cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn, and I don't know which you are. And immediately, like, hearing that I might be special in some way made me think, oh, I must learn about that. And that was the very first thing. But there were other things going on, not just astrological. I used to see things and hear things and feel things as a child. And I had this kind of crazy, which I now realize isn't crazy, but I used to have these kind of, my hands would tingle a lot. And if my mum and dad were having an argument, or if there was something going on, I used to rub my hands together and just like put them on things. Like even like as a teenager, if I had a cassette tape that stopped working, how, because I know you're only a couple of years younger than me. So, you'd be like recording. Yeah. You'd be recording top of the pops.
Use a pencil to go through.
I'd have all these like cassettes full of old Top of the Pops, like the Sunday charts. I'd record it off the radio. I'll play it back. And these tapes would get re-recorded on again and again and again, and they would fall apart. And so I'd start doing trying to fix tapes. Anyone born before, after 1990 will have no idea
what we're talking about.
Even less than anyone born in from 1985 onwards. But I used to actually heat my hands up and hold the tapes. Just felt like I wanted to do it, and miraculously I'd be able to listen to Duran again. I was really happy. So I was doing all these kind of weird things and not understanding it. And when I started getting pocket money, the first thing I did was buy a sort of compendium, which had astrology in, tarot. It had palmistry. I learned to read palms. And then I think on a trip to Alton Towers, how, your parents might have a work day out and they take the family along. I remember being on this coach to Alton Towers from Kent, and it was quite a pretty long journey. And as a little kid, I was running up and down the aisle because there wasn't any safety problems then, asking people to read their hands. And I was reading palms to learn and getting feedback. But every now and again, I would hold a palm, and all of a sudden, without reading the lines, I was able to say something about what was going on. And so I was developing my intuitive and learning about astrology, and that really went on. And when I was 19, I think I invested in a professional astrology course, and did that remotely while I was living in France, and I kept it to myself because when I was in my 20s, like most people in their 20s, they want to prove to the world how great they are, and it's like a time to be a statement person, isn't it? Say, this is who I am. I bought my first house, with my then partner, and just went into corporate world and corporate life, and didn't dare tell anyone that I was I was training as an astrologer and that I could read palms. But it persisted. And then when I became a mum, when I was 36, a long time later, I just knew I couldn't work in the corporate world in the same way. And I did for a while. I was a freelance trainer, so I'd do like 3 days a month. And then the rest of the time was my time to be a mum. At that time, my husband would walk around with our baby in a sling. He'd be watching me from over the river, because I was at the canal in London, and he would come over and I'd breastfeed on like train breaks and things. So, I was really trying to balance it, but it just, I couldn't balance corporate life and mumhood. And so I outed myself as an astrologer. And so all the times I'd been doing free readings by donation and stuff, I started to do donations. And then after a while, I started to charge a small amount, and then it just went from there. And now I've got a really thriving practice. I've got membership, so people, I do coaching for them on a regular basis, on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. And I'm able to work with people all around the world. It feels great to finally be myself. It feels really good. Took a while. And, do you find with some of the people you work with, like, it wasn't just astrology I studied. I also became a hypnotist and an LP coach. I did quite a few coaching qualifications and Reiki 1 and 2 and all sorts of different things, trying to think which seems the most acceptable, hypnotherapist. I'll be a hypnotherapist because that sounds slightly scientific. It sounds but yeah, now I kind of blend it all.
And I love that, and we're so glad you did it. Yes, it's brilliant. And I don't know, I completely relate to that, Louisa, because I know when in my 20s I packed my tarot away, like my tarot cards, and I used to read tarot, all the time for people, just for free, because I love doing it. And that was something that I started off at a quite young age, 12, 13. I think I had my first deck. And me too. I think we must have hung out in the same shop, because I was in the astrology, the New Age section in Dillon's. I think it was Dillon's at the time, before it was even Waterstones. And and I was that slightly geeky, I guess. I'd be reading Jung, and people were like, "Why are you reading Jung?" And we're all, because I like it. And that, for me, it was like going into psychology was a work. My dad was in science. He's a chemical engineer, and coming from that background, it was kind of like, why are you into all this stuff? This is a bit, it's all kind of has to be maths and science and very scientific. Although he loves it now, actually. It's quite funny. He's gone through a little bit of an awakening himself. But yeah, in my 20s, I kind of packed my tarot away, and that mask that you talked about going into that corporate world, it was like I had to put that mask on, and that mask kind of almost like got thicker and thicker as the years progressed. And
it's harder to take off.
Yeah, much harder to take off. But also you kind of feel it, and the knocks start getting louder. It's like, take that mask off, be you, be that authentic you. And it's interesting when you say, what's the most acceptable form of spirituality I can introduce? So I went into, I left the corporate world, and I was going to be a corporate coach, because that's what I did for 18 years, right? So I was in global media and planning. And I thought, transformational coaching, that's what I was drawn to. And I said, I could do this as, as corporate coaching. But I was also looking at Reiki at the same time. But I thought, no, I'm going to go down the transformational coaching route. And then, it's so true. It's as you say, it's like, what's the most acceptable? But now people are coming to me for the, for the Kundalini yoga that I blend in with the transformational coaching and the more spiritual element of it. It's really interesting.
Well, it's a form of alchemy, isn't it? Like the blending of the two and finding that balance. I think it's important, because we are still living in this world.
Yes. Yes, very much in this world. And I think sometimes, we kind of, we're in our, when we're working with clients, and then you're at the school gates the next minute and having this very different conversation. So, but I'm definitely seeing more and more people, the more I talk about it, the more people are really get interested and actually curious about it and questioning. So how, I guess, so you started this new track, I guess, I wouldn't say started, but you took your authentic self to your business, and you brought that, after having children. how do you use astrology as a tool, I guess, for business? I know we talk about it in life a lot, but I have that strong belief that it really helps in business as well.
Well, it definitely does. There's so many ways to answer this. Like most people, when they come to see an astrologer, or in fact any kind of coach, they're looking for first aid. So like I was a very good astrological first aid triage person, helping someone out with their immediate problem. How I most like working with people is on a month-to-month or week-to-week basis, helping them move towards their goals and helping them achieve them or look for the right times. And that's what I do with people in business. So in fact, most of my clients are actually entrepreneurs, and it's not surprising really, that you attract people in a similar vibration to yourself. And so I meet a lot of intuitive coaches and work with a lot of people who have intuitive or creative businesses, or who are starting something and working for themselves, in particular people who are traveling as well or moving around, and people who are making a transition from corporate life or working full-time for a job, and who want to develop their own business. And so one of the first ways that we can do that is to explore their business. And look for the compatibility in their chart. So if they're talking about the idea of what they want, does that resonate with their birth chart, first of all? Because if it doesn't, what does? And so often that coaching conversation comes in, and people can clarify really what their unique selling point is, because they know themselves a bit better. Because most people that are in that process are actually wanting to live more joyful lives. They're not just wanting to make a buck, they're wanting to make a buck that feels really in integrity with who they are. And so it's fascinating. I love that side of it. So we do a bit of matching. But then I'll also look at what's coming up in their charts. Like, does this look like the right time for them to start a business? And if so, when are the real go times, and when are the ones to kind of hold back and do a bit more research? So, and I do this with people on an individual basis. I think of it as cosmically surfing the planetary waves, because we have waves of opportunity that come into us, and we have waves of restriction that come into us, and both can be used positively, and both can be really abused and affect us negatively. And so I chart those out and talk to the client or the business owner about how those waves are coming in. Are they bringing opportunity into their business, or is this a time to hold back and wait? And so we're able to sort of plan the flows of the business, the long term. So it's not so much for the short term, but really for the long term, so that you're moving in tune with the moon, but in tune with all the planets. So I have a couple of people that I speak with on a monthly basis, who I've been working on their investment portfolio, and I've got no investment experience. I did work for JP Chase, and I did used to train sort of basic information about stocks and shares and things like that back in the day. But I'm not a financial astrologer, though I know quite a bit about it. But I look at what's coming into them, and they've been taking that advice and profiting from it. So it's worked for them. They haven't asked me to stop. I've been doing this for over 2 years, so that's working for them. I work with people to help them find their launch dates for products. I also have customers that have HR problems, and so they contact me and say, I've got this problem. And one of the things that I do in astrology, which is more of a new thing, not every astrologer does this. There are some that are kind of like, no, we're pure astrologers. You only need the planets. But I've been using asteroids for about 10 years. Oh, wow. And there's named asteroids. Like there's over 10,000 named asteroids. And so, like when you're reading tarot cards, and sometimes you might just pick an extra card for a bit of extra clarification. Yeah. And you might say, I'm going to pick an extra card to represent this person that you've just mentioned. And you pull the card out, and there's the extra meaning. So I use astrology like that. So if a customer, all of my customers that I work with on a monthly basis, they're on a plan with me. And they all have an opportunity to ask me a kind of surprise question each month. If something comes up and they need urgent sort of first aid help, then they contact me. And so, for instance, with the HR thing, somebody contacted me. I've got these 2 people, gave me their names, said a rough bit of the situation that was going on, and I found the named asteroids that represented each of those people and a word that represented the situation they were in. And when you put those into the chart, like if you look at the chart from the time, place and date that the decision or the meeting needed to take place on, it gives you so much more information. And it's like the chart almost goes from 3D to 5D, you know, like the idea of, it's almost like the chart can be used in a completely new way.
Yeah.
And so like your birth chart, I could use it to look at any situation in your life right now. I could use it to describe your health, your, like anything. You just give me some extra words, or like when people write to me, with my NLP training, I really zone in on the words that you're using, because there's no accident to those words. And I think, right, I'm going to find that and see where that lands in the chart. And there's always something like a deeper significance. And so like the name vibrations, they really carry on. And so it really fits in with numerology. It's almost tying astrology together with other sciences, because it becomes much more of a vibrational tool. So in that respect, I also use it to help people find their business names. So find business names to resonate with their chart. And for instance, one lady set up a business last year, gave me her business name, and it didn't seem to be working. But the closest asteroid I could find that described the business that she was doing was asteroid Rise. And so I did this reading, and I put asteroid Rise in her chart and told her a load of stuff. Shared a load of stuff with her. And then 2 months later, she just changed her business name and called it called her business Rise. It's incredible. But like people, I don't know, it just works. I can't explain it really. There's no rational explanation of it.
Well, that's incredible. Never even thought about. Asteroids. That's amazing. That, you know, bringing them into it as well. And actually, why not use it as a tool to kind of help you with, you know, things like business names? I mean, I love that. And also in meetings, if you've got people there's conflicts, I guess people look at, you know, Myers, you know, Briggs personality test, right? All the time, and all the other various personality tests. So actually, what could you get more? This is, you know, astrology been around for a lot longer than Myers-Briggs and all these other tests out there.
I recently came into contact with somebody in a private group, and I came across somebody who was a platform speaker and spoke a lot against the government or different things. And she was obviously from not part of a resistance group, but part of a research group, and had a lot of funding behind her. And, you know, we didn't talk in our, you know, like we didn't really introduce ourselves as such, but I just said, it's really interesting what you're doing. If you need an astrologer to look at something, I'll gift you my services, because I'm interested in getting to the truth of things, and I want to support people that are doing active research. And she said, that's really kind of you, but we've actually got 6 astrologers that we work with all year round. And so this top, like, I don't know if it's a secret society or some top area of research, has its own astrologers that work full time for them. And I was like, oh my God, it's like CIA, is like CIA astrology or something.
Well, absolutely. If you look back at the CIA in the 70s, right? They used to use PKs. So that, oh my goodness, I've gone blank now. But that's basically about telepathy, isn't it? And using kind of all this, I guess, stuff it was all undercover, and it's being used. And it was started, I think the Russians were using it, and China, I think, during the Cold War, wasn't it? So how interesting.
So I always use every now and again when I work with the clients, I take all the asteroids out and go back to the original birth chart and have that moment of purity. And I still get really great results, but I see asteroids as a great tool. And actually, by using the asteroids, when I've been using them, I've started channeling through the sessions, because all of a sudden these names, they're triggering patterns and visions and sense and all different things. And so that's actually impacted. So when I actually just work with a normal birth chart now, I'm used to just feeling that connection, a bit like how I used to with palms, reading palms, things would come to me. Now I look at a chart and it's just like a portal. It just pulls me in. It's like, boom, there you are, connected. It's incredible. Yeah, and the one thing I didn't mention about business is your launch date. When is the right time to launch your business? Like the exact time. There are good times, and I do that for people wanting to get married or wanting to recommit. Like, when's the best time for you to get married? There's a whole science around that, and it does work.
And I guess also when you say launch dates, for a business, but launch dates for projects, particular projects, ongoing projects, yes, or campaigns or whatever, whatever you've got going on in your business world. Yeah, that's.
There's no secret that announcements that come from governments come on very strong astrological days with very interesting numerology. Yeah, there was a lot around 3/11, like the 11th of March, and the release date of, there's COVID in the UK and we're going to have a lockdown. Announcements of lockdowns and stuff have, when I've been looking at the launch dates of things, there's been a reason for it.
Interesting. So yes, I mean, definitely, I think astrologers are being. So are you saying actually that astrology is being used particularly in the structures from yeah. Because it's always been used throughout time, hasn't it? We know back in in the ancient times there would always be consulting the oracle, or So why have things changed? No, they haven't.
There's a veil like sitting behind the governments and the astrologers, like that says, oh no, there's nothing like this going on, but there is.
Yes,
absolutely, definitely. Or the names, the times when royalty get married, or when a royal child arrives, gives birth. I'm not entirely sure that those birth dates are, I sometimes think they're enhanced, like the baby is, delivered.
Right.
There's no surprise with these dates. When you see them, you can see why. They're always on power days.
Yes. So everyone who's listening to this or watching this, start getting curious about the dates you start seeing.
I'm not like the Truman Show. Maybe, I mean, that just sounds fantastical. But like it's a bit like the Matrix as well. Like what we see is just what we're perceiving through our eyes, and then we're also perceiving things through our ears. And we think that the colors that we see in front of us are the only colors, but different species see different colors. Like ultraviolet and infrared are colors, and we don't even see them. Does that mean they don't exist? They do exist.
Exactly.
So our perception is just tuned into a very finite part of reality, and
yeah, it's very limited, isn't it? Our perceptions are limited, and who is it? That wonderful quote: "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite." I think that was William Blake.
I love William Blake.
Yes. He was. Yeah. So I think the Aldous Huxley used that for the Doors of Perception for his book, and obviously no other bands like the Doors have used that. But that's it. It's our perception. We are just seeing what we.
He was a Sagittarius.
Built. Blake.
Yeah, Sagittarius.
Oh, was he? Oh.
Yeah, because for my A levels, I did art and design, English language and literature, and I did religious studies. And I had to do a dissertation for each of them. And I, to save time, I just did a dissertation about William Blake and used studying him to do 3 different dissertations.
Brilliant idea. Love it. That's genius.
It just happened. I mean, I found the whole sort of like dissolution, like separate subjects made no sense to me. And William Blake clearly did all 3 of those. He was an artist, a philosopher, social, a religious philosopher, really, spiritual philosopher, and a writer. Yeah. I've never mentioned that to anyone before.
Oh, really? I was just going to say, actually, I did A-level art as well. I did English as well and art, and I did French as well. But in my dissertation, mine was William Blake. So there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, William Blake fans here. But it's interesting how you mentioned before how astrology being linked to being quite linked actually to science, or spirituality and science now are coming to that. Well, science is catching up, really, isn't it, with spirituality, finally. What people used to think was completely woo-woo is really now just, it is being scientifically proven. And I think there's this, even Einstein would say, had the wonderful quote of today's imagination is tomorrow's reality. So with that, I'm going to my little inroad into the Higher Self Expo that's coming up, which is about science meeting spirituality, right? I'm just going to read again that, for everyone who missed at the beginning, about what the Higher Self Expo is. It's a 24-hour broadcast event featuring 6 hosts, 33 speakers in 6 different continents on the 17th and 18th of July. So it's all happening 24 hours at once, right? So it's moving from one continent to another.
It starts in America
Yep.
With those hosts and presenters. Then it goes over to Australia and around that area, and then finally it ends the whole day in Europe.
Brilliant. And what's your topic for this one?
Well, it's about astrology, and actually I think the title is Astrology, where science meets spirituality. So actually copied like the sort of like theme for the show. But actually astrology is the meeting of science and spirituality. But lots of people won't see that. So it's a talk about, well, I'm going to get a bit philosophical with it. I will talk about, how can we be scientific in astrology? First of all, obviously I can't put astrology in a petri dish. I can't create a sterile environment and have people monitoring it. But what's the next best thing I can do? How can we be scientific in our approach to testing astrology? So I'll be exploring a bit about that, talking about the origins of it, because once upon a time, astrology and astronomy were the same thing. And then for probably religious and political reasons, it was separated and kept far apart. But all the astrology I do is based on an ephemeris, which is basically, the latitudinal and longitudinal positions of every single planet and now asteroid in our solar system. And so when I draw up charts, I'm not just picking figures out of the air and saying, oh yeah, when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter. By the way, that song, I don't think that's entirely possible to bring on the age of Aquarius. When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars and peace to all the planet. But, when we draw up a chart, we get the actual positions of the planets to the exact second. It's based on the science of astronomy. So I'm just going to be talking about the origins of astrology and then giving some, I guess, correlations is probably the closest we can get to the scientific evidence. And so I'm going to be sharing a lot of the correlations that have come up in my work, but also in the work of the great astrologers that have existed. So for instance, there are some that have done studies on Korea and astrology, and also the planets, where the planets are and how they're located. For instance, people who have a military background tend to have a very strong Jupiter, Mars and Saturn alignment in their charts. And so certain alignments come up again and again and again and again. And just as an aside, when I set up my coaching, mentoring astrological program a couple of years ago, there were a higher correlation of people with a Capricorn moon and a Pisces moon that came to join the plan. And there's a reason for that. And out of those Capricorn moons, their moons, there were 8 of them, their moons all out of 30 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, their moons were all between 20 and 28 degrees. 8 of them, and the people who had their moon in Pisces or something really significant in Pisces, it was always around the degrees of between 18 and 24 degrees in sign of Pisces. Now that sounds really weird, but to an astrologer, they would just go, of course, because that's where Pluto is. Pluto's been between 20 and 26 degrees in the sign of Capricorn for the last 4 years or so. And right now, Neptune, the second slowest planet, is around 22 degrees in the sign of Pisces. Where these planets are, it correlates. The energies of those planets link into people's birth charts. And if you've got something significant there, the energy of the planet, like Pluto, is transformation, which sounds all nice. But anyone that's been through a dark night of the soul or has felt like their life has been ripped apart, the flesh has been ripped from their bones, it really feels like you have to die to transform. No, Pluto is the resurrection. It's the planet of resurrection, really.
Yeah.
And so, people have been joining me with strong Capricorn influences because they're going through this time of resurrection. They need some light. And people with Neptune influences currently being triggered in their lives, they're experiencing confusion. They're not experiencing strong boundaries, and they don't know how to find their direction, how to tune in. And that's why they're coming up. The next slowest planet, boom, is Uranus, the planet of change, which creates a whole different kettle of fish. But, the next load of people, the next big correlation in my clients' work is people with things going on with Uranus in their chart, or Uranus's current position impacting their chart. It's not a coincidence.
No.
And if ever I launch an offer, around the time of the solstice, whenever I'm looking at who contacts me, nearly all the people that contact me at a solstice or equinox offer, they will be born at the time of the equinox or solstice. Not necessarily the one that's going on, but their sun will either be in a square opposition or in a conjunction with the actual equinox. It happens without fail. And I bet you find with your coaching practice that when people approach you, you'll get a run of a theme that comes up again and again. So you see one person, then you see another, and there'll be some kind of unifying theme. And then when you sit down later on with your husband, you have a cup of tea, put your feet up, and you think, crikey, that fits in with my life a little bit. I'm learning something about myself here as well.
Yeah.
Because people say with coaching, it's like buy one, get one free. Like people pay for the coaching with you, but you also get coached yourself. And that's happening with astrology too.
Well, I kind of look at it, it's like that collective consciousness, right? It's that collective, and that's what's happening in the planets, what's happening there energetically, that collective, and then it's also happening on that individual level, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're all doing that. So that works. So that what's going on at the moment. So we're, we talked about now being a very interesting time at the moment with all these things going on the collective, on the kind of, the 3D level, and in, on a personal level as well, all these shifts that are happening.
Yeah.
And it's about, I guess, navigating. I know for me right now, the breath has been a really useful, breath work has been such an instrumental tool for me to kind of cope, especially with my Mercury, my monkey mind. Yes. I'm a Virgo, so Mercury is in my chart, and I think sometimes stepping into the heart gets a little bit difficult. So it's like that breath, and I do a lot of breath work with Kundalini anyway, so that's been really helpful for me. What is the helpful or the go-to tool for you to help you navigate?
Ooh. When I'm really struggling, I write myself a hypnotherapy CD. And I've learned now to do it in such a way that it's not personalized, not too personalized. So then not only I get to use it, but I can also, share it so other people can use it too. I think coaching, actually, I have somebody that I speak to on a regular basis who is like my coach. I have a couple of mentors. So I've got a very experienced coach that I speak to quite regularly. Not necessarily because I need to, but because I think it's good practice. So I just sometimes say, this theme has come up for me every now and again. And I answer my question, but I do that in the presence of somebody who I absolutely trust and love. So she gives me the chance to absolutely hear myself resolve my problem or my line of inquiry. So I have that person. I also have a family homeopath who I've been using for about 10 years. He's in the UK, but I still stay in contact with him even though I'm based in Portugal now. And with him, I get a chance to really, really talk freely. And homeopaths are very good listeners. Have you ever used a homeopath?
No, I haven't.
They are by far the best listeners. They listen to every single, a bit like an NLP person, they'll be listening to every single word because you're revealing the core of your problem in the words that you choose. And so I like to use him maybe once or twice a year. I just give him a call and say, I think it's time for me to check in. And often there's nothing that actually needs any kind of rebalance, but I get that chance to be absolutely heard and listen to fully, in a way that, God bless my husband, I love him to pieces, but you know, like if you say something that might feel a bit personal to your husband that loves you, they take it personally, or they think, oh my goodness, Tucci's upset, or Louisa's upset, I must not be being my best, and they get defensive. This person,
and you're like, don't be judged. No, don't self-judge yourself. Don't judge yourself. This is not, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
All I want to do is be heard. That's all I
Yes.
want. And so twice a year, I contact this fantastic homeopath that hears me. And then he sits there quietly and he does this magic thing of just feeding back to me a different context for me to live by, you know, and a piece of advice or a statement. And it feels fatherly as well. You know, I think the world is a little bit absent of fathers and mums. And I want to be an elder one day, like a go-to elder that can be there to support younger people, you know, anyone. In fact, I'd like to be an elder, you know, somebody that is adding to the wealth of goodness, you know. And this homeopath is like a father. He feels like a father energy, and I think we need more mothers and we need more fathers.
Definitely. And I love that you said that whole mother energy, that kind of almost witch. I'm going to use the word witch, right? Yeah. How I've learned the word witch actually, is actually a wise woman. So a woman who, so in the past, when a woman went through menopause or went through her, you know, that phase, that witch was for a wise woman. You're a wise woman at that age. You know, you've got and actually the word, and this is, I'm going to quote Guru Singh, who I learned my Kundalini yoga with on his Kundalini University. He used the word, you know, people don't get offended when I use the word bitch, but bitch was actually created as a word for the young woman. I was like, what? And he's like, this woman's this word has been completely and utterly, you know, misused. Yeah. And that's not where the word originated. He's honestly, Guru Singh is like the master of, I can't even think of the word. You know, when you have the finding the root words. During the course, we're like, please we need you to write a book with all the words and the meanings, because he's just brilliant at sharing that. But yes, that sort of that wise woman to be able to share and listen. And when you talk about that homeopath listening through, it's almost like not listening through all your body. That deep listening, that sunya, that deep level of listening where the intonations of the words that you're using, it's not even the words that you're speaking, it's almost the kind of the way you're speaking, isn't it? And feeling it and understanding it. Oh, just going to give me such goosebumps when you were talking about that. I think I might have to check them out.
I'm not sure if I've actually fully answered your question though. You know, you said, what's my go-to thing?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think we do the work we need to do. So lots of people who maybe had funny childhoods and want to kind of create a better story for themselves often end up in marketing and sales, you know, because they're creating a new narrative to live by. Yes. I found myself in salesy work when I was younger and went into training sort of early on because I want to teach and also learn. And when I think about my coaching, what I do for my customers, I really listen to them. And that's because I need to feel heard. And so they're my two go-to people. But then the other thing and hypnotherapy, obviously, I listen to. And the other thing is I do gardening. I garden. And that's my way of getting some alone time, or washing up. See, that's my other bit of go-to. I don't
mindfulness, mindful washing up.
Because it's that moment where nobody else is disturbing you, and all of a sudden you can hear your voice again.
But gardening is that nature, isn't it? That connection, that connectivity to nature, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes ask, you know, a question of like the tree or the plant, which sounds a bit bonkers, but I do think that our consciousness is the same. We just need to tune into them. So sometimes I say, oh, what do you think I should plant this? And wait for the answer. So then my go-to is just any way that I can get heard. It's probably why I've got a YouTube channel, and I don't think many people hear me on it, but at least I feel like I'm giving myself the chance to.
That's really interesting, though. It's so true, isn't it? You want to be being that heard. And what I've noticed as well, voice memos. I don't know if you use voice memos with clients so I've been doing a lot of voice memos, and I say to my clients, you know, leave me in between sessions, leave me voice memos. And I do it with people as well, with friends, and actually one of my mentors. And I find it, for me, it's like almost like having your own coaching session. You've done a voice message and left a 5-minute message going, oh, I've got my answer now. I mean, it's brilliant. But I also wanted to touch upon what you said earlier about having your own mentors and coaches. I think it is, in our industry, it is important for us to have that, isn't it? We spend a lot of time coaching, but we are constantly developing as well. And I don't think that many people are aware of that. I have my own coach. I change my coaches, but as we all up level and grow, we're all, needing to have experience different coaches. But it's really important, I think, doctors still see doctors, right?
Yes, of course.
So yeah, I just kind of want to touch on that. And just looking at the time, sorry, Louisa, just wanted to quickly ask you around family. I know family is huge to you, right?
Yeah.
Really important. What does it mean to you having a family?
Oh, I think my life actually started when I gave birth, or when I conceived my first child. It feels like everything that happened before, it almost feels like I was a different person. I've been waiting to become a mum for a long time, and I found myself in a relationship which didn't yield in a child because we couldn't agree on it. I wanted one, he didn't, and that was never going to work, was it? Yeah. That was a painful learning. And we both went into it really open-heartedly. And it was perfect, the timing when, my first son was born, when my husband and I met, even though he already had 2 sort of grown-up children, we just knew that there was going to be a child coming. And so we invited the child in. We said, come join us. And I feel these beings contact me. Like my son spoke to me throughout the whole pregnancy. In fact, other people heard him speaking too, which is very bizarre. It's a completely different conversation. But, I can't imagine my life. I mean, obviously every parent says this, I can't imagine my life without them. But yeah, my whole life is informed by them. I learned so much from them. I'm really grateful. I spend nearly all my time with them. Like we homeschool, or it's not really homeschool, it's more like an unschool. We just give them the chance to learn what they want to learn, when they want to learn it, and how. And I just trust that they're going to know everything that they need to know. And it's a really difficult game for me to play, because I did really well at school, and like when you look at society, I don't want my kids to be I don't want them to have difficulties in their life. But I want them to love learning and be really sort of able to learn how they want to. Like working as a trainer and then a coach for so long, you know that everyone's so different. And I spent most of my time at school, even though I did well, I spent pretty much 10-12 years resenting being sent to the same place day in, day out. So I spend a lot of time with my children doing stuff, and I love it. I really do. But the continuous worry that I might be causing them harm is there. But I know that they've got such a strong grounding. They know who they are, and they feel very comfortable. And we've taken them on adventures, like we both work a couple of hours a day, a few hours, and then we go off on an exploration. And we're learning. We go to libraries, we go to museums, we go to the park, whatever. Everything's a learning situation. But yeah, I don't think I'd be the coach I am today without having had that experience, or having also gone through the experience of thinking I'd never become a mum. I'd been single for 6 years before I met my husband, and I was in my late 30s thinking it was never going to happen. And within a week of us physically meeting, I mean, we'd been chatting on Zoom for 60 days or something. But when we met, that was it. He asked me to move in. Wow. We conceived our first child within the first week. We didn't hold back, put it that way. We achieved a lot very quickly in our relationship. So, if anyone's listening that thinks life is never going to happen in the way they want, I'm proof that your life can turn and change just like that. Don't give up.
Yeah, and that timing as well, that piece around the timing, that was the, the timing was right, and it, you went with it, and now look at you, and looking at what you do, you're a mum of three, you've got three children. Your youngest is two, 5-year-old, and a 10-year-old, 9-year-old, sorry, 9-year-old.
He'll be 10 soon. So
you're homeschooling your kids. You're you're a businesswoman, right? You're an entrepreneur. You've got all these amazing skills, and you're balancing. How do you balance, success and balance?
Well, my husband also works from home, which helps. So we swap. I'm in the hot seat right now, but before I sat down in this, he was working. He did like the morning shift. And then so I'm looking after the kids in the morning, doing stuff with them, but also getting them to do chores around the house and chatting and laughing and whatever goes on, wiping bums. And then we swap, and my husband Carl, he does lunch with them. And then like when we both stop working, we all go out. And as they're getting older, the three children love playing together. I mean, this last year, it's been a lot harder for us, but our life hasn't really changed. I feel really, I've got so much respect for people like you that have had to hold it all together whilst also homeschooling your children when your life isn't already set up for that. Like, our life didn't really change when COVID came on. In fact, in many respects, it got easier because we didn't have people judging us because we weren't sending our kids to school. All of a sudden, everyone's kids were home, and it felt like, oh, thank goodness. I don't have to worry about that now. But so our kids, they play a lot together, and so now, as our eldest is more responsible, they're starting to lead a little bit of their play. They don't need us around so much, so we are still around, but they're getting more freedoms. So I don't know, we're a bit like it's a bit like Swiss Family Robinson at times, making stuff together, but
making and baking and crafts.
Yeah, we've got chickens, we've got dogs, we've got a very big garden, we've got a trampoline that they love, and we just do stuff together.
It sounds like you spend a lot of time together when you organised it in a way that's balanced, so that you've got the time in the morning or the afternoon, so your husband, one of you is looking after the children, and then you do stuff all together as a family at the end of it, which is beautiful. Which COVID has helped people to do, I think, as well, for people here who haven't had that and who are thrown into it, suddenly going, we were eating meals together, which, long may that live, I think, for people.
I mean, it's not for everyone. I mean, for us to be able to do that, we moved to Portugal so that we didn't have high overheads, so that both my husband and I could work part-time. And when we first moved over, our joint income was minimal. And then over the last couple of years, I've been able to earn a full-time wage by working 3 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And so we always have mostly have our weekends off. And my husband's able to do that now as well. So we've almost got 2 full-time wages, and we're both working part-time from home. But it's been a struggle. And there's been times when we've thought we're gonna have to come back to the UK and live with parents for a bit.
That's an incentive to stop you, right? Okay, right, keep it going.
Yeah, it's been an act of faith. It's not for everyone. Like, we don't go out like with friends so much, I mean, we have lots of friends, but we don't really have babysitters, because we just love spending time with our kids. I almost don't want to not be with them, so I'm possibly a bit possessive, and I'm probably going to come up unstuck when they grow up and like leave me.
I guess with your youngest being so young still, your youngest still being 2, that's you're still in that kind of nap. I mean, out of nappies, but that sort of nappy sort of stage, aren't you? It's still kind of that bubble of scrumminess.
We could come into a new territory soon, because like our 9-year-old, because he hasn't been at school and not been party to all the same things that every school child has got. He's not like backward in any way at all. Like, he's grown up, but he doesn't want there's lots of things that he doesn't realize he wants. Like, kids know what they want from seeing what everyone else has got. And so he doesn't do that so much. And so we've almost been able to hold on to his innocence a little bit, but his his need to come out into the world is growing, you know, like around 7 and 8, kids need a lot more of the outside, and I can see that happening in him. And he's got some pals that he's hooked up with remotely, and he plays lots of Minecraft and he has lots of online conversations. And we do hang out now that restrictions have changed. We can hang out with real people as well, which is quite good.
Yes, yeah, which is great. Yeah, for him, especially because as they want to discover their own, their personalities are really growing at this, aren't they? And I guess we get to that point in as a child towards whether it's early adolescence, that real kind of not rebellious, but that I want to be, you know, I want to find out who I am, and who really asserting your sort of identity. And I know I've done it, and I'm sure you
definitely did it.
And
definitely did it.
But I love this notion of what did you call it? Unschooling or unlearning, that kind of
unlearning,
unlearning, because I think there is so much that is learned at school that I definitely feel like our generation, the children being born now or in the last 10, 15 years and are being born are different. They are much more sensitive. They are much more empathetic. They are born into this new world that we are birthing, and they are the education system isn't designed for them. There are so many flaws in the system around how to do, and we're still trying to put them into this a square peg into a square, you know what I mean? What is that term?
Round peg into a square hole. It's true. Like, I mean, like as a fellow empath, you and I both empathic. Like when you're in a school situation and your behavior, your aptitude is being monitored against like 30 other people, that's a lot of pressure. I felt it so much when I was at school. In fact, in sixth form I got suspended 3 times.
Did you? Brilliant. What were you doing?
And I started acting up.
Acting up.
Wearing at a teacher, being dressed inappropriately. Nothing major. But
that's when the rebellious kind of nature. I mean, I remember at school, I was really quiet. I was, I don't want to use labels, but the labels I will use are, typical introvert, a highly sensitive person, that sort of child. I just kind of, was very dreamy and everything's lovely. And it just, the extrovert nature is really, especially back then, maybe less so now, but it really celebrated. And I remember going into corporate and going to this big agency, and they said that they're going to do Myers-Briggs tests on us. And I said, okay, great. And I got mine back, and I went, what?
INFP?
No, actually, it was an INTJ, very strangely. But
wow.
But the I was the one that hit me. I was like, I don't want it to be this I. I don't want to be. And I remember feeling really, I mean, of course, I'm 44, and back then there was no quiet, the book by Susan Cain or any of these things. It was just not celebrated at all. Now people are like, yeah, I'm an introvert. But it just, I just remember going, oh, that's, shit, isn't it? But now, of course, I know being an empath, that's, it's my superpower, I need to recharge, and I love being out in nature and just being away. I am social. I love talking to people. I love having these kind of conversations. You won't catch me having a kind of, the small talk kind of, it's quite tricky.
Like talking about the weather. Or the football, not for me.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff, and I'm like, yes, we have a platform where we can now do this. Brilliant. And what advice would you have for parents, Louisa, who are perhaps going through tricky times, and they are still in the corporate world and going, but yeah, you've done it, but I can't do it. I often hear that.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I mean, it took some sacrifice, because we had to, like we didn't have a car, we didn't have a house. We rented cars, and we've done some interesting things to move around Portugal. Like we've house sat, and lots of exciting opportunities. We renovated a house, which was an old hotel, which was disused, and so we've brought life back to wherever we've moved to. We've had to busk our way. It's been hard. It's not for the faint-hearted. But what I would say to any parent is just don't sweat the small stuff. Just like I understand we all need to live and we all need to eat, but the circumstances around where we're living and if we're doing things right necessarily, I think parents can be very critical of themselves, and I think it's the most important thing is that you've got a connection with your child. I think children are very forgiving. And they think we're superheroes, even if we don't feel like that. The one thing that I've always learned is our parents, our children absolutely love us more than we can love ourselves. And so I would say quit giving yourself a hard time. Absolutely is the first thing. And then think about how you'd like to live. Like if money wasn't an issue, if your circumstances weren't an issue, how would you live? And just like for free, write it or talk it into a microphone or whatever. Just get really creative and just start focusing on it, because I think as you focus on the feelings of how you'd like to feel in your ideal life, then those feelings start to manifest into things. So like, we just wanted to feel free, that we didn't have someone telling us how we had to do parenting. We wanted to do it ourselves. Unsurprisingly, given my
I was going to say Sagittarius.
We wanted to have the chance to do it our own way, because we think we're responsible people. We think we're loving people, and we love our children so much and love hanging out with them. So I just say connect to the feeling that you'd like to experience on a daily basis as a parent, and it will start to manifest. It's an act of faith. It's a leap of faith.
Yes.
And it starts with you. We've all got choices, and sometimes our choices might be not very good, but we have choices. And even if no choice feels particularly good, it's still important to commit to one, because if you don't make a choice, then life isn't getting any kind of instruction from you. So make a choice, even if it's not the right choice. Choose the best choice you can in the moment, and then you'll be presented with two new choices, because it's much easier to get moving and it's much easier to choose on the go. But if you're stuck and you're saying, no, none of this is the choice I want to make, all the universe or the world or God or whatever it hears is no choice, no choice, no choice. So you've got to commit. You've got to choose the next best thing. Always choose the next
Otherwise
best
you're
thing.
stuck, aren't you? You're in that stuck energy where you've got to be flowing. Good river, the river's got to flow. You're going to come across obstacles. It's not going to, we all come across obstacles. It's just how you keep flowing and navigating through that. And I think that's really beautiful how you said, it's that having that faith. And I think that what came up for me when you were talking was that trust. You really had that strong sense of trusting in what's going to be unfolding.
And also on the homeschool front, my son, I know he's intelligent. He can talk about anything he likes, and he talks about it with a perception that staggers me sometimes. I'm like, whoa. You're really smart. And I try to teach him to read. I started trying to teach him phonics from about 3 or 4, maybe I was a bit too young, and always trying to get him excited in things. And he would always kind of just respond and say no, and walk away. He was really defiant. And I had to just have the faith. I could have forced him, and absolutely forced him, and say, no, you will do this, and you will do this now. And as I heard myself saying that in my head, I thought, oh gosh, I'm channeling my mum or my dad or my school. And I remembered how it made me feel. And I thought, no, I'm gonna commit to my gut feeling, which is he's going to learn anyway. And it wasn't until he got really interested in Pokemon, I think, that he started to want to be able to read a book, and he had a Pokemon game and it had instructions. And all of a sudden he started just learning. It was as if he'd had this magical upgrade. He'd remembered all of these phonics from years ago, but it all started to fall into place. And actually he reads beautifully, and he reads to his siblings, and like he doesn't see a large word and know to fear it. He just sees every word as a word. Like I think when you learn in a structured way, you learn small words first and then you learn big words later, and it's not necessarily a natural way of doing it, but he just sees every word. And I'm amazed, but he's learned to read and write with very little instruction from me, not because I didn't want to, but because he wouldn't take it from me.
Yeah. And he wasn't ready. Maybe that just wasn't ready. Wasn't ready for it. And we do, you know, there's that pressure, isn't there? That's a society. You've got to do this by this certain age, and some kids are not, you know, are just not ready. I remember having a friend of mine. She was, I think she's a barrister, and she didn't learn to read until she was 9. She was saying, because she just didn't want to learn.
Yes,
didn't want to learn it.
yes, and yeah, we don't know what damage we do to children when they get forced into things. I don't think it's massive damage, but we know, you know, and we can only do our best as parents. You know, I know I'll be causing some problems down the line for my kids, but I won't be intentionally doing it. But you know,
and to forgive yourself as well, like you said earlier. You know, be forgiving to yourself, because we do beat ourselves up about, you know, so much.
Definitely, and it never stops.
Yes,
never stops. So anyway, that's advice, what it's worth.
Thank you. And I think you're so inspirational. I think what you guys have done is incredible. So, you know, super inspirational. And is there anything else actually that you would like to, any last words of wisdom before you lead us into a channeled meditation?
You are enough. You are enough. Everyone, wherever you go, there you are. So like, you know, like we often, like when we moved over here, we thought, okay, we're gonna be able to fly under the radar a little bit and have a bit more choice, and maybe that person, that situation that didn't work out for us in that place, you know, we'll be free of that. Wherever you go, you find yourself, and all those bits of you that aren't resolved, they catch up with you. So we find a mirroring situation, you know, with a person that maybe we thought, we're avoiding that, it just shows up again in a different way. But you are enough, and if there are patterns coming up for you, you are enough, and at some level you are wanting to challenge yourself to let go of a pattern. And how you do it is absolutely fine, but you are completely well healed and whole and perfect the way you are, and it's also still okay to transform and allow yourself to have these moments. So that's my last bit of advice.
Thank you. Beautiful. So if you'd like to, actually, before we do the meditation, I'll read out your where people can come and find you.
Sure.
If that's good. So your feelgoodastrology.com.
Yep.
So www.feelgoodastrology.com, Louisa at feelgoodastrology.com, and I'll include all this on the YouTube page and the Facebook posts, all the social media posts. So facebook.com /feelgoodastrology, and also on Twitter. You're on Twitter and Instagram, Feel Good Astrology on Instagram, and also on Twitter and YouTube. So you're Louise Tanner Munson on YouTube, aren't you?
Louisa Tanner Munson, yeah.
And not sorry, but I said it wrongly before.
That's fine, it's fine. But if you search under the handle Feel Good Astrology or under the handle Louisa Tanner Munson, you should find me. If ever I set up a new account, I'll always set up with both. So yeah.
Yay! So if you wouldn't mind, leading us into a short
Okay, I'm not entirely sure what to do. Okay, let's just have a grounded one, because I've been a bit woo, haven't I? And actually I could do with relaxing a little bit. So if you're listening in now, just shuffle in your seat a little bit so you feel really grounded, and get your feet nice. Just balance out your body a little bit. And if you take in now a good, long, slow, deep breath, and just release. And if you slow your breath and go deeper and deeper into the best, most complete place of peace that you can find yourself in. And any tension in your forehead, you can just let that go. And allow any tension in your jaw or in your neck and your shoulders, just let that ease off as you continue to breathe slowly. And let any heaviness and relaxation just flow down now, all the way down your body, just all the way down through the tips of your fingers and down through to the tips of your toes. And I don't know if you can breathe in the feeling of peace and allow that to go through your body. But you know the way to generate that in yourself. And maybe for a moment, you can focus on a time where you felt so peaceful and so grounded that you just felt wonderfully supported. And allow the things that you could hear and smell and feel and see, allow those sensations to come into your body and to go where they need to go. Because when we can find ourselves in a place of peace, and when we can focus on the most peaceful time and the most peaceful sensations we've ever experienced, that truly can be a gift for yourself. So, in a moment, let's just awaken gently. But before you do that, just take in a good, long, slow, deep breath and enjoy any peaceful sensations. And just know that you can take that peace with you for the rest of your day. And so when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Open your eyes now, bringing the sense of peace and awareness back into your now.
Thank you, Louisa. That was beautiful. Oh, I think that's perfect. I think we've got a 7-year-old birthday this afternoon.
Oh goodness, you do, don't you?
So I'm going to be in my peace, doing it in all ease and peace, I think. Thank you so much for that.
You've got to ice a cake, haven't you now?
I'm going to ice a cake and then perhaps send my husband to pick up the kids. He's working from home. He's home
I'm
today.
so sorry. I've spent so much time talking with you. It's been a real luxury. I've loved it.
It's been absolutely brilliant. You've been so wonderful to talk to. Thank you so, so much. I've absolutely loved it. I hope you have too.
I really have. And I'm really looking forward to it because we're going to have another conversation. We're going to talk about conscious parenting on my channel.
Yes, that would be absolutely brilliant. I cannot wait. So thank you so much, Louisa. You have been incredible, inspirational, and thank you for sharing everything you have with us today.
Oh, thank you for listening. I feel very heard, so that's very good.
So, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show another time because I think there's so many things we can carry on discussing.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime, Tuğçe. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.